The 8 Sleep Pod 5 is here, and there are 3 major updates. Buttons to control the elevation, temperature, and sound, a pod blanket for 2 times the temperature coverage, and a speaker for soundscapes and Dr. Andrew Huberman's voice. There are some special connections that I don't know what they're for yet, and in today's video, I'm actually going to test it to see how fast does this thing heat and cool. How does it compare to the old Pod 4? Because now we have a blanket that also heats and cools. So is it slower? Is it faster? Is it just as good? And is it able to improve my sleep quality? So we got early access to test this out. And lastly, we'll finish off with pricing. Always remember to use discount code Trevor to save some extra money. 8 Sleep did not pay me to make this video, but they did send me the Pod 5 early to be able to do this testing. And using that discount code helps support the channel. Let's get into it. Hey honey, what do you think of this bed? She never has an answer. Well, one day this seat will be filled. We can wear all the wearables, we can sleep on the 8 Sleep. But let me show you all the new features of the Pod 5 Ultra. There's some stuff that I'm very excited about and some things that I'm curious to see if people will use or not. So let's get into it. The first thing I talked about were buttons. So I told you on this side we now have these physical buttons. I'm actually going to put this in sleep mode. So if you're sleeping and you want to increase the temperature, you'll press and hold 1,000, and then it'll actually vibrate zzz, to tell you that the temperature is now increasing. I can press and hold low. Boom. I heard of zzz, and now it's going down 1. So you have -10, +10. This button right here, I can press it 4 times. Or I press it twice to switch between the modes that you just saw. I went from reading mode down to sleeping mode where it's going down. I can bring the head up 45 degrees and the feet up 20 degrees. So there's a lot of movement, and that's if you purchase the Pod 5 Ultra with the base. If I go and press and hold the plus button for 1 second or the minus button for 1 second, you'll be able to increase and decrease the temperatures. And because they're physical buttons, you can actually feel the indentation. You can know where the button is, and it's so much easier to change the temperature without looking at where the buttons and the touchpad are. All you need to do is press and hold. You press and hold for 1 second, and bam, just like that, the temperature has now dropped to -8. You'll hear a slight vibration, and that means the temperature is now changing. There's also a center button to be able to change the elevation of the bed. So let's say you're in reading mode and you want to go to sleep mode, you just press that 4 times. Or if you want to snooze the alarm, you want to stop the alarm, you can use the center button for that. Or even if you want to control the music. So there's a new speaker that's built into the Pod 5 base. And I know I'll probably, if I ever get married, I'm probably going to lose her to this man right here. So we're going to press play. The Pod has this very, very interesting man that comes with it.
Non-sleep deep rest allows you to consciously shift...
Daddy Huberman? Dr. Andrew Huberman comes built into your 8 Sleep Pod 5 Ultra.
Stressing, planning, from anticipation of any kind, positive or negative, to one of pure sensation.
Maybe I don't want that and actually want to do a sleeping exercise. There are 2 protocols currently from Dr. Andrew Huberman inside of the app, and his voice will now play either until I fall asleep, a custom duration. I can press play here, and now we see protocol 1. We have 10 minutes left. I can control the volume.
Sleep deep rest allows you to consciously shift your brain state from thinking, stressing, planning, from anticipation.
And now Dr. Andrew Huberman is playing straight out of the base of the Pod 5 Ultra. This has been very interesting because I love NSDR, but the process of actually doing it, the friction level is pretty high, and I don't do it because I have to pull out my phone, pull up YouTube, Spotify, whatever it is, and being able to just use it inside the 8 Sleep app, I just press play. I can lay in bed, and then maybe I even fall asleep in bed. I don't have to worry about turning something off, disconnecting my phone. It's that easy. I think being able to relax, get calm, fall asleep faster, this is going to be a big game-changing feature. I've already tested it once and I've fallen in love with it. That's enough. So now if you want to sleep with me and Dr. Andrew Huberman at the same time, we've got the Pod 5 Ultra, which will do that. It's not the only feature. There are also soundscapes. So if I don't want to listen to Dr. Andrew Huberman, I can tap a soundscape. For example, pink noise. I can press play. Brown noise. Island beach life. I can heart the ones that I really like, and then I have the option to play this until I fall asleep because this is a smart bed. It knows when I fall asleep. I can play it until I wake up or a custom amount of time. So there's a ton of cool features that I can do. The NSDR with Andrew Huberman I think is the coolest, built into the base of this mattress. The elevation works the same as the Pod 4. The heating, cooling, which we learned, we tested about, it still has the alarms, but now with the new speaker, you can also have audible alarms. Alarm section, not only can I do temperature, vibration, smart alarm to wake me up within a certain time period so I feel more refreshed when I wake up. Now there is a sound option, so I can go ahead and press play, and I can wake up to sound in addition to all of these other options. Which if you have a partner and you're waking up at different times, yes, that can be a bit frustrating, But if you are waking up at the same time, you can play an audible alarm here. So let's go. We had temperature, we had vibration on your specific side of the bed, but now we have sound alarms. So you can play things like that to be able to wake you up with sound, in addition to all the other features that you had with temperature, vibration, and even elevation. The Pod 5 still has the same cleaning cartridge that the Pod 4 Ultra had. The tubing looks the same, the hub looks the same, but there are internal upgrades. Within the mattress itself, they decreased the sizes of certain things. They made it easier to install. So there are definitely some minor improvements, but the biggest and the most exciting change is not just the buttons, but now the Pod 5 blanket. So this is the blanket. It's got a duvet cover on it right now. The blanket is black, and on the bottom, you can see that there are tubes. So we have tubes here. This side, wow, it's actually warm right now. You can feel it. This side, I was heating it up. This side, we're cooling. So it's connected to your specific side of the bed. This tube is a little cold, which makes sense. And now the blanket, so you have a top and bottom surface that are going to be heating and cooling. This is one of the biggest upgrades of the Pod 5. There are 2 tubes that are coming in and out here, and 2 tubes over here that connect to the bottom of the mattress. There are actually connections in the cover. You don't need the blanket. If you want to buy the cover and upgrade to the blanket later, you can do that as long as you get the Pod 5. And if you do plan to buy this, remember, use discount code Shervin. It stacks a bigger discount on the ones you have, so we can keep making videos like this. Back to Shervin at the desk. Blanket, you'll be able to even see with the animations. I have my Pod 4 here. There is no blanket in this point. But in this one, they have the blanket on top of the cover, and both of these will fit on any mattress that you might already have. And when you go into the app, you'll be able to see pod and blanket temperature. It is dual zone control, so I can control the left side of the bed for me, add a right side of the bed for me, part 2. And whatever temperature I select for this side will change the temperature for the pod cover and the blanket on that specific side. So if I go to Shervin 2, the pod and blanket will be different temperatures. Things that stay relatively the same is the temperature control, being able to decrease, increase the temperature, set your now, nighttime, and dawn temperatures, changing it for all nights. Even controlling the pod and blanket temperature will be pretty much the same if you just have the pod. Now, in addition to the blanket, you have ambient response, the sleep stage response, so you can automatically change this temperature based on ambient and sleep stages. You have your data where you can see how much you slept, how your sleep stages were, your consistency over time, your different biometrics. I did have 2 major questions that I wanted to test to learn. Is the Pod 5 actually worth upgrading for, and does it actually perform what 8 Sleep is saying? So the first one was the sleep data. How are the sleep stages, the sleep start end times, and potentially the snore tracking compared to my Whoop, my Apple Watch, and my Oura Ring? Do I even need to wear these wearables if the 8 Sleep cover can do all that stuff for me? So let's compare. Oura versus 8 Sleep Pod 5. It looks like the sleep scores were pretty much the same, but how was my total sleep stage times? We got 3 hours and 45 minutes of sleep, 3 hours and 48 minutes. Went to bed at 1:44 versus 1:58. Woke up at 6:01. That was spot on. REM 52 versus 57. Deep sleep 1 hour 8 versus 1 hour 5. Let's compare one more night. 90 optimal, 100 on the 8 Sleep. 8 hours 21 versus 8 hours 39. 1 hour 43 versus 2 hours 11 of REM. 1 hour 52 versus 1 hour 54 of deep. If we compare the biometrics, 52 resting heart rate versus 55, 36 HRV versus 25 HRV, 16.6 respiratory rate versus 16.5. Okay, what about Whoop? 58 versus 60, hours of sleep 358 versus 348, 1 hour 24 versus 1 hour 5 of deep, 1 hour 2 versus 57 minutes of REM. They both do have sleep consistency charts, which I really appreciate. Resting heart rate 53 versus 51, HRV 36 versus 31, Monday 89 versus 100. 9 hours 55 versus 8 hours and 39 of sleep. That's a big difference. Deep 2 hours 42 versus 1 hour 54. REM 2 hours 30 versus 2 hours 11. Sleep consistency charts. Resting heart rate 60 versus 55. HRV 36 versus 20. Bigger differences with the Whoop, so that's interesting. Apple Watch 344 versus 348. 1 hour 7 of deep versus 1 hour 5. REM 51 versus 57. Kind of sleep consistency charts. Resting heart rate, we get a range. Respiratory rate, we also get a range, which is within. Monday night, 9 hours and 22 minutes versus 8 hours 39. 1 hour 51 versus 1 hour 54 of deep. 1 hour 41 versus 2 hours 11 of REM. Resting heart rate ranges, respiratory rate ranges. One thing I would love to see on the 8 Sleep is temperature. I think the biggest conclusion I've realized is most wearables are going to have vast differences. As we can see here, some of them are drastically off, but most relatively they're all close enough. It's about the trend is your friend. Look at sleep consistency over time. Are you waking up at the same time, going to bed at the same time? And are your total sleep times close enough to your other wearables? Forget everything else. And now if you know me, I love testing things. So now we're going to test the temperature, how long it takes to cool, how long it takes to heat, the energy consumption, the noise levels, of the Pod 4, which is last year's version, the Pod 5. Does the blanket impact any of these performance levels? I'm so curious to find out. If you didn't know, I did a video where I tested the Pod 2 versus the Pod 3 versus the Pod 4. So if you want to go watch that, you can see all the data in that video. But today we are just going to be covering the Pod 4 versus the Pod 5. And I tried to be more extensive with my testing and temperature numbers. Now you can see all the temperatures I have in Fahrenheit and Celsius. The biggest thing I wanted to see is, does it cool or heat slower or faster? Is it using more or less energy? And is the noise levels pretty much the same or lower than the previous model? I have the Pod 4 on the bottom, the Pod 5 on the top. We'll talk first about time to cool. Now, as a baseline, I wanted to get the gun temp over the sheets, so I used the thermal gun to measure the temperature over the sheets, and they're pretty much the same. Then we measured the cover at the coldest temperature, which showed to be 69 degrees Fahrenheit and 72 on the Pod 4. So for some reason, the Pod 4 might have been slightly warmer. The ambient temperature of the room was around 80 to 83 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 27 to 28 Celsius, 26 to 40% humidity, and the ambient noise levels were 37 to 40 decibels. What was interesting is the gun temp showed colder on the Pod 5, but warmer on the thermal camera. But the Pod 4 was warmer on the gun temperature, but colder on the thermal camera. One thing to note is the hub will always be emitting heat when it's cooling, so the hub was definitely warm at 106 degrees Fahrenheit. And I also decided to test the wall behind the hub, and that was relatively warm as well, but not as warm as the hub itself. Then the new addition is the blanket. Is the blanket temperature the same as the cover? It looked to be 1 to 2 degrees warmer than the cover itself. I think there's just thicker layers of sheets between the blanket, and that's why it feels warmer, whereas the cover directly was just 1 to 2 degrees colder. The slowest setting on the pods is 55 degrees Fahrenheit, but what you're going to actually feel is closer to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, because the water might be 55, but with the tubing and the addition of the covers and all those types of things, it's going to feel a little bit warmer. So in terms of getting cold enough, the duration, 67 minutes for 65, I put those pretty close enough. Probably a slight margin of error for my testing on my part. I'm not an official scientist, but I think these numbers are close enough to say they're pretty much the same. So knowing that the same tubing, the same amount of water is being used to cool a cover on both sides as well as a blanket shows that this unit is probably stronger and able to cool both these areas at the same speed. Noise levels I measured on top of the hub, directly behind the hub, and then right by the pillow. So on top of the hub, it did decrease about 5 decibels from our baseline of 40. Right behind the hub is where it's going to be the loudest, but then if you put the decibel meter right by the pillow, it does drop quite a bit, and it's closer to the baseline of the room. I would argue that both of these are pretty quiet and unnoticeable. If it is loud on that, there might be something wrong with your pod, so make sure to contact customer service. But they have these really fancy fans that are extremely well built, and these units are extremely quiet. Amps wise, the Pod 5 was using a little bit more power. The kilowatt hours it used was also higher. It got to -9 pretty quick, but to get to -10 took quite a bit for some reason, and that's maybe why the kilowatt hours was higher on the Pod 5 versus the Pod 4. I'm no scientist, we only ran this test once, so keep all that in mind. But the one thing to know is the Pod 5 does use a little bit more power because it needs to cool 2 areas essentially, and it's able to do that in the same amount of time with essentially the same noise levels. Now we looked at the data, but how does it feel anecdotally? So if I come back here and I just kind of put my hand around, I can feel the warm air pumping out from behind the hub. So you really do want space on both sides of the hub, because out here, yeah, it's getting a little bit of cold air out of the sides here, warm air out of the back. So you do want space for ventilation for the hub. You don't want to put this somewhere where it's like really enclosed. Now the next step is if I go in with the blanket and the cover being at the coldest temperature possible, oh, it's cold. Do I feel a difference? And yes, I do. I feel cold on top and bottom. The sensation is pretty similar on the top and bottom. I would say the blanket definitely feels just as cold as the bottom because they should be connected, and you can have a different temperature on the right side as well as the left side. The blanket and the cover on each side are connected. So the cover and blanket are one temperature here, the cover blanket are another temperature over there. Now, is it necessary to have a cold top and cold bottom? I'm not sure. I need to sleep on this a few more nights, but we'll share the data. I personally love it being even colder. I just feel like now there's more places where my body is able to feel cold because I run so hot. So it is nice to have. Is it necessary to upgrade if you have the Pod 4? Not sure yet. Now, what about the time to heat? So I was starting from -10, working our way to +10. Yes, that is an extreme testing example, but that's kind of what I've done in the past experiments, so we kept it the same. The Pod 5 took 50 minutes to heat, whereas the Pod 4 took 28 minutes. I'm not 100% sure why it took a bit longer, but the noise levels were pretty much the same. The watts seemed to be a bit higher on the Pod 4. The amps also are higher on the Pod 4, but the total power used, the kilowatt hours, was higher on the Pod 5 just because it took longer. Now, when we look at the surface temperature of the cover, it was 94.3 on the Pod 5 and 93.5 on the Pod 4, so negligible. The thermal camera, 87. Thermal camera, 89.7. So maybe the Pod 5 was like 1-2 degrees warmer in terms of how it felt, versus the Pod 4 was just 1 degree lower. How was the blanket in comparison? Blanket was close, 89.1 on the thermal gun as well as the thermal camera. I think the biggest thing is the blanket's going to be 1 to 2 degrees lower than the actual cover temperature. So it's close, but it's not exactly there. And I think that's just because the blanket's a bit thicker. So when it's heating, it's actually going to emit colder air. So the back of the hub was 72 degrees Fahrenheit and the wall was 80 degrees Fahrenheit, probably just reducing the heat from before. 77 on the Pod 4. But you also do have dual zone control. So when you do that, half the tubes will be red in the thermal camera, the other half will be blue. You can have half the bed with the cover and the blanket be really cold and the other half of the bed be really hot. Obviously, that's going to use different power consumption, but I just want to test purely heat and cold. If you have comments below on what you want to see in future tests, let me know and I can make those happen. We are at plus 10, the hottest temperature. Let's see how it feels anecdotally. Oh, it's warm, it's warm. I think one thing Zach mentioned is the blanket feels a little less temperature than the bottom cover. But for me, I feel like the blanket, I can feel the sensations more than the bottom. Maybe because the blanket like rests on my skin, whereas the cover is like flat. Like on my shins, I can really feel that temperature change. But it does feel warm. It feels very warm on the top and the bottom. This is way too hot for me to sleep. I would be woken up by this. But it does have dual zone control, so if your partner likes it warm, they can have their side of the blanket warm. I don't know. This is very warm. Too warm for me! But yes, this feels warm. And the one weird thing is when you heat it up, it's going to pump cool air out. So when I put my hand over here, I feel cold air coming out of the back of the hub. And we can see that in the data, obviously. Good night. So just looking at the overall data, I would say the Pod 5 is relatively just as strong as the Pod 4. The time to heat did take a bit longer, but that could have just been an error in terms of how I did the testing. But the temperatures on the cover, the blanket, strong, solid, good job, 8 Sleep. Shervin approved. Now when it comes to pricing, how much does this cost? That is always the hardest part. These things are not cheap. The Pod 5 Core, which is just the cover, is going to be $2,849 up to $3,249. And using discount code Shervin will actually stack a bigger discount on what they might already offer on their website. And click the link in the description because that helps support the channel. The Pod 5 Plus, which is the second tier, is the cover plus the blanket. That's $4,009 to $4,299. And then the final tier, which is the one that I have on the queen size, is Pod 5 Ultra. You get the cover, the blanket, and the base, which allows you to elevate the bed and have speakers. That is $6,099 up to $6,299, depending on the bed size, from queen up to a Cali King. And there's one thing that people are going to get upset about, which I'm like, we're going to add another subscription. There is an Autopilot subscription. It is $199 on an annual basis for the base plan and $299 for the 5-year warranty plan. You have to have this the first year. So the first 12 months you are required to purchase this. So add another $199 to the price tag, $299 if you want to have the 5-year warranty, and pay $299 every year for at least 5 years. Am I in love with this? No, I hate subscriptions. More subscriptions, not ideal. It's like you're already paying $4,000 or $5,000 for a bed, and now you got another $199 subscription. I don't like it, but it is what it is. You can purchase this bed in the United States, Canada, Mexico, the UK, Australia, EU, and the UAE. There's a 30-night trial period, so if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to like this, you can test it out for 30 nights. Use discount code Shervin. When I bought my very first 8 Sleep, I think it was the Pod 1 or Pod 2, I did try it, and there was a 100-night trial, and I did end up returning it. But then it was so sad that I didn't have it that I was like, I need to buy one, and ever since then, I've slept on 8 Sleep. 8 Sleep is like one of those things that you can just install, set it, forget it. Yes, it is very expensive, but I've found so much value. The effort to value ratio is so good that this is the one product that I absolutely recommend to everyone. If you have the money to make it happen, it can bring so much value to your life with almost no effort. You don't have to charge it, you don't have to think about it. You put water in like once a year, maybe even. It helps me sleep better, fall asleep faster, and I don't have to interact with the app almost ever after I set it up initially. Now, the gosh darn subscription, what does it do? So the pricing, if you want to do monthly after the first year, is $17 a month for the base plan, and then $25 a month for the extended 5-year warranty. You're going to get the auto temperature changes. So if I actually tap this little star on the top right, you can see the autopilot adjustments that happened the previous night. It can even be based and shown across my sleep stages. That's going to help you stay asleep longer and just be more efficient with your sleep. It tells you, hey, phase changes, ambient response, sleep stage response. These are how many nights I've used Autopilot and the adjustments that I've had over the entire duration. So that's one thing that you get. The second is with the elevation. So you can go to relax. The bed's going to open up. It goes 45 degrees on the head, 25 on the feet. But now there's a snore response. So if I'm a light, moderate, or heavy snorer, it'll adjust the elevation of the head to reduce snoring. And then lastly, the alarms. You can wake up with the smart alarm. It'll wake you up in the lightest sleep in that 30-minute window. You get your sleep and health reports, the vibration thermal alarm, snoring detection mitigation, the maintenance insert delivery so you can keep your water clean and your hub and cover and blanket are running perfectly. These are all included in the base Autopilot subscription. The only thing that the higher tier gets you is an extended 5-year warranty. Now, I personally love my 8 Sleep, but they have made some clinical claims. They say that 92% of their members reported improved sleep quality. It can reduce snoring up to 45%, and members see a 25% increase in deep sleep. Just showing you my wearable data and how different some of them might be. I can't say anything specific about these numbers, but what I can say is I fall asleep so much faster. I love rolling into my 8 Sleep because I'm such a hot human being that when I lay down and having that cold on the top, cold on the bottom makes me feel that much better. It's just that much easier to fall asleep. I love my 8 Sleep. Like I absolutely love it. And now with the new blanket, I can be cool on the top as well. That just means I can run my AC at a lower temperature. It doesn't mean I don't run it at all. And although the hub does emit heat while it's cooling, it's not enough to impact the ambient temperature of the room too much, as long as you have some ventilation. These are the biggest upgrades to the Pod 5 Ultra. Subscribe, turn on notifications to see future videos. Follow me on the socials at ShervinShares. If you do plan to buy it, click the link in the description. That'll help support the channel. Use discount code Shervin. That'll stack an extra discount for you and help support the channel even more. 8 Sleep did not pay me to make this video. They did send me the pod early access to do this testing. Thank you again. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.